to say or show. My name is Mark Hoffman. I'm the Maryland Director for the Chesapeake Bay Commission. Just for those of you who aren't familiar with the commission, it's the commission is a tri-state made up of mostly state legislators from Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And we work to coordinate legislative policy at both the state and federal level to help improve the health of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And I'm the Maryland Director. I work a lot with the Maryland General Assembly. And I'm also a member, I'm very proud to be a member of the Delmarva Land and Litter Collaborative, which is hosting the webinar today. And for those of you who have some folks who are not familiar with the DLLC, it's really a unique group. It's people, the fact of the matter is there have been a lot of controversy and issues and divisiveness related to litter management on the Delmarva over the decades, and thanks in large part to the Keith Campbell Foundation and back to Nrcs and Solutions from Land, it made a decision to try to bring together a lot of the stakeholders in a collaborative approach, and that continues to pay dividends. And today's work is a good example of that, where we can help facilitate bringing together some of the real technical experts on finance for improving ag BMPs on the peninsula. And we do have a big challenge. The commission's very active in ag space, particularly trying to get more funding for ag. We're currently, I hope my USDA friends are here or listening. We're working very hard to try to get another $750 million for ag funding on the Delmarva, or in the watershed. But it's initiatives like that that are going to be important. And that leads right into the purposes of today's webinar, which is to support our partners in successfully implementing their conservation priorities, helping you all, the folks on the webinar, understanding the federal funding resources, and enhancing coordination for ag conservation to improve water quality. And we've got a really good lineup of folks with a high degree of expertise in this field to do that. Just some logistical details. We will be having the opportunity for speakers to the attendees to ask questions after each speaker. So if you've got something, I'll pause, and if folks want to raise their hand, we've got some helpers who will help identify if folks have questions, or of course, feel free to put them in the chat. That'll be welcome as well. And as I already said, we're going to record the presentations once we get at the end. Now, this is important. At the end, we're going to have sort of a larger kind of brainstorming session to talk about some of these topics once we hear all of the presentations. So we're not going to be recording that, but that'll hopefully set us up for action or better ideas moving forward. And also, this is set up as a Zoom meeting. I think we all know the drill by now, but it's not a webinar. We really wanted it to be more interactive. So just FYI. And also, if you want to, if the folks who are on the attendees, if you all could put your name and your title and your affiliation in the chat, that would be good. We'll have that for the record. We would appreciate that. So with that, if there aren't any questions about the sort of housekeeping stuff, we're going to get going. And our first session is accessing and leveraging federal funding. And we're great. Today we're going to have Jake Riley, who's the director of the Chesapeake Bay programs at the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which is an integral partner, as most of us know, on the Bay. And also we've got both Robert McAfee, who's the acting state conservationist for Maryland, is going to introduce Leon Tillman, who is the Chesapeake Bay Coordinator for USDA Nrcs. And then hopefully we can get Kelly Shank, a good friend of the commission, the Ag Advisor for EPA Region 3, to share her thoughts as well. So with that, Jake, you're up first, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to you. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Mark. I appreciate it. There's going to be a lot of, I think, hopefully some back and forth between Rob and Leon and Kelly and I, one of the sort of orders of the day, I think, as it relates to, well, has been for sure for a long time, but I think a renewed emphasis on federal funding specifically related to ag conservation is this idea of coordination. And certainly EPA and Nrcs and USDA are the largest funders of ag conservation work here in the watershed for good reason. For myself and my programs, I'll be talking a little bit. I know Kelly will be talking a bit to some of the other EPA programs, but we're fortunate at the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to deliver the Chesapeake Bay Stewardship Fund. And so what that is it's a portfolio of grant programs that historically and currently are largely funded by EPA's Chesapeake Bay Program Office. We're also fortunate to have resources from Nrcs and other federal agencies, as well as other corporations and philanthropies here in the Chesapeake Bay region. And what we do is we pool those resources to deliver comprehensive conservation programs to support watershed restoration. So we have a lot of different interests and priorities on the water quality side, both ag and stormwater. Being the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, we're all about the critters as well. So we have lots of resources and programs that, for example, for DLLC as relevant, supporting things like marsh and wetlands restoration for black duck. But the largest sort of pot of funding, I would say, every year goes directly towards ag conservation work. So really excited to be talking to the DLLC. Also other sort of threads and strings of connection. You all know Kristen Hughes Evans very well and Sustainable Chesapeake. They also serve as a field liaison contracted position for our programs, really helping to support program outreach, really talking to partners around conceiving of good and effective and competitive projects. We do operate our programs generally competitively. So we're sort of looking at the best of the best, but you all have an expert in that sense amidst you in Kristen Hughes Evans. So I would definitely encourage either individuals or partners as DLLC sort of continues to look towards solutions to really be in close contact with Kristen, because she's an excellent resource for us in our programs. So generally speaking, we have a number of different pots that we're leveraging and specific funding programs. Folks may know that we have a current request for proposals on the street. It's our small watershed grants program. Doesn't necessarily have to be a small watershed that you're working in. It's really more of the title of the program. But that program is sort of the smaller of our two major EPA programs. Grants up to $500,000. Uniquely this year, we have sort of lifted our match requirements. We're certainly still encouraging folks to bring non-federal match to the table, but grants of up to $500,000 this year have sort of waived a match requirement. And we're focused on a lot of things in that program, but absolutely, again, ag conservation work is top of mind for us as we move forward in that program. We have two tracks in that program, our small watershed implementation track and our planning and technical assistance track. You see Kristen and I think others had dropped the links into the chat there so you can take a look. The implementation program is all about implementation, right? And generally speaking, that's what we're about at NFWF, is really supporting on the ground implementation of conservation practices that are going to get us the natural resources and environmental lift that we need for a variety of different purposes, including water quality. That track this year, we sort of lifted the floor from to $75,000 and capped out at $500,000. Our planning and technical assistance track is dedicated in sort of acknowledgement that there's a lot of technical work that needs to get done before we can get to the point of solid implementation programs and projects. So that program, we've lifted the ceiling on that program up to $75,000. That can support a really wide array of things, sort of hardcore technical assistance as it relates to ag conservation work, things like engineering and design and conservation planning, but can include a lot of other things as well. I mean, we see, for example, a lot of folks using that program, for example, to leverage sort of program design and sort of social science applications to really make sure that as we're doing things like landowner outreach, we're being incredibly effective and using the best strategies possible. So again, really broad sort of breadth in that program. And again, would encourage folks, Kristen Hughes Evans might have her phone ringing here, but to be reaching out to Kristen or me and my staff. We're very happy to talk. We don't have these field liaison positions because we don't like to talk to grantees. We're just fortunate to be bursting at the seams these days with resources. And so we can't entertain the conversations enough. Our Our bigger program is, and that small watershed grants program proposals are due in sort of mid to late April this year. April 21st, I believe, is the due date. We also have, on the other side of things, that sort of our second sort of big pillar is our innovative nutrient and sediment reduction grants program. And I think probably at least maybe a quarter to a third of the folks I see sort of on the line here are generally familiar with our programs and may have actually been successful in tapping one or both of them already. But our innovative nutrient and sediment reduction grants program is our larger program, grants of up to $1 million currently. We do have a higher sort of non-federal match expectation, really sort of one-to-one is kind of what we're looking for in that program. By its title, you can guess it's all about nutrient and sediment reduction, right? So very much focused explicitly and sort of solely focused on water quality improvement. We used to deliver that program, I would say, with a wider set of sort of priorities. We kind of consider that program our ability to fund innovation sort of soup to nuts as it relates to watershed restoration work. So for example, things like innovative technologies that sort of look and smell a lot like Nrcs's Conservation Innovation Grants program, right? But as we have sort of marched towards 2025 and really locked in sort of the priority best management practices with respect to EPA and the state agencies here, as well as some evaluation work that NIFWF and EPA and others have been doing, have really tightened that program up here. So we are really explicitly focusing that program these days on delivering load reductions specifically through collaborations and partnerships. And that really is the emphasis here. And there's lots of stories in terms of why and how we sort of landed there. But what we're seeing is we made that shift in about 2018 and really fortunately and sort of presciently, I guess, we are really starting to see that the collaboratives and partnerships that we are funding through that program are becoming the leading partnerships out there on the landscape in terms of delivery of WIP implementation, right? On behalf of, but also in partnership with the states. So really would encourage specifically this group as DLLC is really, really well positioned as an existing collaborative focused on sort of a critical water quality and natural resource issue. To think about that innovative nutrient sediment reduction grants program as an opportunity to start to pilot and then scale the kinds of implementation solutions that you all are talking about. We've used, for example, our small watershed grants program to help develop the litter matching service app that you all might have been hearing about lately. So, you know, the opportunity to then take it that step further. How can we utilize tools like that to help move litter around the Delmarva, right, to the lands that need it, to the lands that can use it, consistent with nutrient management planning, you know, at the state level. So I think that's really it. I mean, I'd also say a couple other things. One is that, as Leon will touch on in more detail, these programs that we're delivering, we have gotten affirmation from EPA that they are a solid source of leverage for the Rcpp program and other USDA conservation programs. So really want to sort of put that out there, that this is a great way to sort of get some resources in hand that you can use then to sort of leverage sort of a bigger competitive proposal to the Rcpp program. In that vein, we have a number of examples where our grants programs and sort of grant awards have been helpful in leveraging Rcpp awards. Different sort of side of the state here, but a good example really would be the Chesapeake Bay Foundation's Mountain to Bay Grazing Alliance, where they were able to sort of leverage actually a number of grants over the years to really kind of help build and expand their capacity to Rcpp awards, right? Where they're able to sort of get our resources to sort of fill gaps, you know, be flexible, and then they can use the Rcpp program to sort of get folks in line through sort of more of the traditional NRCS program lane. So a great opportunity, I think, there to continue to leverage sort of cross-leverage programs. And I hesitated as to whether I would even put this out here today, but I do know that this USDA Climate Smart Commodities opportunity is definitely sort of top of mind for a lot of folks. NIFWF, in concert with our experts like Kristen, and I know Liz Feinberg is also on the line, one of our field liaisons, are really looking at that opportunity and really whether we can leverage NIFWIF's sort of regional footprint, the leverage that we have with folks like Kelly and EPA to really help deliver solutions and opportunities for the entire Chesapeake Bay watershed. So I would say stay tuned on that, but certainly another thing I think that we're all really sort of looking at. So I think that's all from me. And remind me, I was thinking on Friday and this morning whether I missed anything in our planning discussion. So Kristen or others, if I've missed anything that we talked about in that, please remind me, but I think that should do it for me.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it. That was a great overview of your very important programs. And NIFWIF is such, I just want to comment on kind of personal organizational nature, how strong a partner NIFWIF is and the valuable role you guys play in supporting the overall efforts. And it's really a unique role that often the other more traditional governmental entities, are not as flexible or have that capacity to do that. So that's great. You're like the financier to some extent, so that's good. Does anyone have any questions right now for Jake specifically, or we could hold those until we get into the broader discussion? Looking for hands. And Nancy Nunn is going to help me spot people in case I don't see any. So, all right, I guess we're good for now. So next up, I'd like to introduce Rob McAfee. Rob is the acting state conservationist for Nrcs for Maryland. I know we were all upset when we heard the recent departure, but Rob's filling in, and we'll see how that everything goes. And one thing Jake brought up that I should have brought up in my intro was, we all saw the big headlines, $1 billion for climate smart ag conservation. So sort of I want to challenge the group and all the great minds we've got here is how do we get some of that $1 billion in the Chesapeake Bay watershed? So Rob, with that, I'll turn it over to you and let's make some comments and introduce Leon. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mark. Thank you so much. And yeah, absolutely disappointed about Dr. Taryn Hillsman's departure. No one more than myself. It's been tough. He was an excellent state conservationist, but we wish him all the luck as the director of the Ecological Sciences Division. So regarding the different opportunities that are coming available here across the Chesapeake Bay, they are immense, which is great because the need is absolutely there. But the thing we need to be absolutely careful of, someone who's better at philosophy than me may be able to get us the right term, but I know there's a theory where it's like the more options that are available, the fewer decisions that get made. I don't know which one that actually is, but that's what we need to be careful of, the paralysis of the opportunities that are in front of us. And there are many. Jake put several out there that are excellent. Many of the partners on this call have taken advantage of those, have taken advantage of the ones here at NRCS. And we absolutely thank you for your work and how you support us in that endeavor. It's been amazing. The laundry list of partners on here is just, I guess, a real inspiration for Monday morning. But we do need to get into the specifics, and there are individuals on this call. Leon is one of them, but we also have several other state conservationists and our assistant state conservationists for programs. So I would like our NRCS representation to introduce themselves, just so that the partners know what resources are available as we get into the more specific questions. Also, we took advantage of Leon forwarding his link, so we have several Leons on the call. So if we could, I have a few more comments, but let's go around and introduce ourselves. Leon, I'll start with you.
All righty. Thank you, Rob. My name is Leon Tillman, as it was stated, the Chesapeake Bay Coordinator working out of our Annapolis, Maryland State Office. Glad to be here.
Delaware. Good morning. Who's with us from NRCS Delaware?
Good morning. This is Carrie Honecker. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I think I am, I'll try. Okay, it's working now. Apologize for that. I was having some camera difficulties, and I am entered as Leon. So Hey, Leon, I'm sorry to take your name for today. I didn't realize that that happened, but good morning, everyone. I'm Carrie Honaker, and I'm the Assistant State Conservationist for Programs here in Delaware. Good to see some of your faces here this morning and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Good morning. All right, over to Virginia.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Edwin Martinez, State Conservationist here in the beautiful state of Virginia. Glad to be here and glad to see you all.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Vincent. I'm the Assistant State Conservationist for Programs here in Virginia. Glad to be with you this morning.
Good morning, Patrick. And Maryland, our Assistant State Conservationist for Programs.
Good morning. My name is Heisha Cordero, and like Rob said, I'm the Assistant State Conservationist for Program. Nice to meet you, everybody, and looking forward for a great conversation.
Good morning, Heisha. I think that might be it, but let me just check. Is anyone else for NRCS?
This is Stacy Bradshaw, Virginia Nrcs.
Good morning. Hello, Stacy.
Good morning.
Well, very good. Thank you to the NRCS participants, and your presence is going to be critical as we get down later in the agenda into some of these specifics. And I just want to say that for NRCS, for USDA, the opportunities are now expanding beyond just the state level. So yes, we have Rcpp. Leon and the rest of the team here is going to get more into the details of Rcpp. Absolutely, I encourage anyone to take advantage of that opportunity. But now we do have the partnerships for climate smart commodities. That is being run and managed largely out of FPAC directly. In addition, we've got the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovations that has 2 different grant opportunities for more urban type projects. And Office of Civil Rights has outreach opportunities as well. And I want to thank our Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I know they're pursuing that opportunity to do some additional outreach in our historically underserved communities. So there are many different opportunities available. The one point I'm kind of emphasizing there is, yes, please keep coming to us. We will help you navigate this process. It doesn't mean that we'll necessarily know every answer, particularly as these opportunities are opening up at that FPAC-wide, USDA-wide level. So, but I will stay committed to, if we don't have the answer, we can either find it for you or get you steered to the right person to get you the right answer. So I don't want anyone to be slowed down in any way by some of these different levels at which things are being managed. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to turn this over to the experts, starting right off with Leon Tillman, who's been our outstanding Chesapeake Bay Watershed Coordinator. To you, Leon.
Thank you so much, Mr. McAfee. Definitely appreciate it. And Mark and all, definitely happy to be here to have the opportunity to share with you all some of these various funding opportunities. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And as that's popping up, definitely do want to emphasize what Jake shared there a little earlier as it pertained to pooling resources for funding opportunities, conservation opportunities within the Delmarva. Us, NIFWIF, and EPA have been doing a lot of work together. So I'm going to touch on some funding coordination work between the 3 of us, as well as touching on the Regional Conservation Partnerships Program and the Climate Smart Commodities funding, as I know that has had increased interest with its announcement here earlier this month. So jumping in to the funding coordination that has been going on, again, there's been some work between EPA, NRCS, and NIFWIF, looking at the various programs that are offered by each. As Rob shared earlier, there are a lot of various opportunities for funding, and sometimes a lot of those opportunities can create some confusion. So each got together to form a team and evaluate some of the options and opportunities available for conservation funding within the Chesapeake Bay, looking at ways to enhance ag conservation funding efforts, but also to try to ensure that there isn't any unnecessary duplication of these conservation efforts across the Bay. So looking at some of EPA's funding, for example, the Small Watersheds Grant, Most Effective Basins funding, 319 funding, NRCS's Rcpp program, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, and Conservation Innovation Grants, the CIG. And so that team started in August of 2020. Finished up that work as far as evaluating the options and opportunities in January of 2021. And so we three have all been started working together as far as having some recurring meetings to more align what we're doing and again, try to reduce that duplication. So recent meetings been able to talk with Jake and others with NIFWIF as well as Kelly Shank with EPA and share, okay, these are when we have funding application announcements coming up. These are when deadlines are coming, getting an idea of partners that have worked with either in the past to see where they may be able to utilize funding that they've received through NIFWIF or any other EPA program and how that may be able to work or transition over to Rcpp. And one of the big things that came out of that was a decision memorandum related to match funding for Rcpp. So what was found is that there were partners that were needing to establish more or be able to consolidate and utilize or show more partner contribution for Rcpp projects. And what the recommendation from the funding coordination team is to establish a memo that would allow for some of that EPA funding and then funding that also comes from EPA through NIFWIF to be able to be utilized as partner match with it being also a federal fund, but being able to count as partner match in the Rcpp program. And so I know Kelly's happy about it. We're happy about it as well. So for the Chesapeake Bay region, there is this decision memo that does allow for EPA Chesapeake Bay grants to be counted as partner match in USDA NRCS's Regional Conservation Partnership Program. So definitely a great accomplishment that has come out of that conservation funding team's work. To shift gears a little bit and to jump into the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, many of you are probably familiar with it, but did want to hit a few high points for those that may not be as familiar, and also as the program has had a few small changes. But again, looking at several principles through this program, looking at impact on the land, also as well as in the community, partner contributions, looking at innovation that may be able to be brought about that may not have been done traditionally through or from NRCS, and then also partnerships and project management. For this year, it's up to $225 million available in funding through Rcpp. And then Rcpp also has two essential pools of funding, the classic Rcpp, but then there's also an alternative funding arrangements Rcpp as well that is a separate pot of funding. There are two funding pools under the classic Rcpp. So partners can request funding through state or multi-state, and then also through the Chesapeake Bay is considered a critical conservation area. So if there is a project that a partner would like to do Chesapeake Bay wide, they can request that project through the CCA, Critical Conservation Area of the Chesapeake Bay, or submit that through the state. But partners through these kind of projects must develop outcomes or goals to be accomplished for the environment, or also social. Rob had mentioned there earlier as far as civil rights outreach, and that being a priority for NRCS as well. So if there's any kind of targeted funding looking for any historically underserved groups or social groups, there is also means to measure progress for a project through social aspects, and then as well as economics, being able to improve economies there locally or within a certain geographic area. And then projects can include things such as addressing climate change, again, benefiting historically underserved producers or populations, or also providing support to urban agriculture. And then one of the benefits of the Regional Conservation Partnership Program as well is there can be an opportunity to renew that partnership agreement. A little bit of a difference between the alternative funding arrangements and the classic Rcpp. So alternative funding arrangements is looking to use innovative approaches to leverage that federal investment in conservation. That's not possible through the classic Rcpp program. So if there are some innovative ways that a partner may be looking to leverage funds to be able to increase conservation implementation or utilizing some other innovative approaches that may not fit within that RCPP classic framework, that alternative funding arrangement pool is definitely going to be a great option. Looking at even options to deploy a pay for performance conservation approach that would be tackled through the AFA funding. And then also, if there's a need to seek large scale infrastructure investment that generate conservation benefits for producers and landowners, that is another option or alternative that can be approached through the AFA alternative funding arrangement pool. So how that differs, the classic funding arrangements, that looks at having NRCS and a lead partner oversee contracts that utilize a single or suite of NRCS programs. So being able to utilize programs such as our EQIP program, our Environmental Quality Incentives program, or our Conservation Stewardship program, or even our easements programs can be utilized through the classic RCPP. And again, that is overseen by the lead partner and still utilizes contributions from other partners. So I'm not going to read this whole slide, but wanted to definitely have this for information as it pertains to partner eligibility. And this is looking at, again, the lead partner. So for the RCPP program, if there is somebody that has interest in being a lead partner, or if there are a group of partners looking to identify a lead partner, this slide right here helps more clearly identify what would need to be the qualifications for that lead partner. The thing I do want to point out in here, as there are many different entities, cooperatives, organizations listed there, is the importance or highlight here is someone that has a history of cooperatively working with producers on agricultural land. That is one of those that really sticks out, you know, whether that is a unit of government, a municipality, or otherwise, Institute for Higher Education. We're looking at those that have worked with the agriculture community historically. And then other contributing partners. Those are those that we're looking at non-federal contributions, and those non-federal contributions can come from any partner. Anything that is contributed to that project to meet the objectives or goals of that project that may come from any partner can be counted. It could be any individual or entity that makes that contribution to that project as well. And so those contributions can come in the form of cash or also in-kind contributions. And I know a lot of different partners have various things to offer, and sometimes those in-kind contributions may be all a partner can offer, but that is also something that can be counted to be able to count that value towards that partner contribution. And then contributing partners and their contributions must be identified when that proposal is submitted through the RCPP portal. And then again, that lead partner is going to be responsible for delivering and reporting delivery of the project contributions. So being a lead partner, it does come with its benefits. They will be, again, coordinating with NRCS and then also the other partners. But in being that lead partner, looking at, these are many of the options that that lead partner would have input on related to the RCPP activities, whether it is a alternative funding arrangement, AFA, or a classic RCPP. So whether it's making decisions on the land management activities, deciding a specific geographic area, what resource concerns may want to be addressed if the focus is to look at nutrients and nutrient management within that area, or to also incorporate water quality. That lead partner will be working with NRCS to identify what resource concerns will be the priority for the project, as well as identifying if there will be any easements. The federal government or the US would hold those easements, or if an entity would hold those easements, would be the decisions and communications as well through lead partners. Also deciding what kind of land uses, ranking, how applications as far as the deadline or number of application periods within a sign up would be made, would also be some decisions that would be communicated with NRCS by those lead partners. So definitely working hand in hand with NRCS to implement that project. And then as Rob had touched on earlier, and I know it was mentioned earlier, as it pertains to a new $1 billion funding opportunity with the Climate Smart Commodities funding. And it's grant funding for partner-led projects. So this is providing finance for climate smart commodities. And I'll talk here a little bit more as far as what those pilot projects should focus on. But again, this is a great large funding opportunity for partners. I know it was mentioned a multi-million dollars was a project that the Bay Commission is looking for. This climate smart commodities funding offers multi-million dollar financing opportunities through USDA. So you can see there are 2 funding pools, and those funding pools are based on the requested amount. So the total amount requested through that proposal will dictate which funding pool you fall into. That first funding pool is going to be for any project that is $5 million to $10 million. And that application deadline is going to be April 8th of 2022. The second funding pool are for the slightly smaller projects from $250,000 to $4.999999 million for the total proposal request. And those that application deadline is May 27th. Again, to touch on the pilot projects and kind of their focus is looking to implement climate smart production practices, activities, and systems on working lands. But also being able to measure, quantify, monitor, and verify carbon and greenhouse gas benefits associated with those practices. And then looking to develop markets and promote the resulting climate smart commodities. For this climate smart commodities funding, the primary applicant must be an entity. They can still work with producers, individuals, and other partners, but again, that primary applicant must be an entity. And then I wanted to just pop up here as far as contacts and additional information. We do have, as you all heard, our Assistant State Conservationists for Programs on this call, but I wanted to provide their names and email addresses in the event that you had questions that may be more state specific. You'd be able to follow up with them to get some additional clarification. But also our RCPP application deadline and the Climate Smart Commodities deadline, both listed there. The RCPP application deadline, April 13th. I mentioned the Climate Smart Commodities deadlines there a little earlier. If you have any questions and need for additional information, I know those links were posted in the chat there initially. So if you scroll up to the top of the chat for this webinar, you'll see the links there for RCPP and the Climate Smart Commodities funding for additional info. But also information for both of those can be found on grants.gov. And that is my final slide. And I see I've got 2 questions or comments in the chat. And Kelly's question about the first funding pool should be to 100 million, not 10 million. And you are correct, Kelly, that is a typo. And thank you, Rob, for answering that question, but that is correct. It should be 5 million to 100 million in funding for that first fund pool. And I see a question from Kristen, is NRCS concerned that RCPP applications will decrease in light of USDA Climate Smart Ag request for program funding? I don't. I can definitely let the state conservationists on the line speak, but I don't have a concern with the decrease in applications. Again, there are focuses for the various projects, and they may be multifaceted, but also I definitely think a benefit of the RCPP program is the ability for that EPA NIFWIF match to work in the benefit of partners. So there are, as Rob mentioned, there are some pros and cons with different kinds of funding. but I think that I don't foresee it being something that will pull a lot of our applicants away. I do also see, based on the scope and focus of different projects, RCPP may work better for a partner that may have a specific, whether it's geographic or target within their project relative to that climate smart commodities funding.
Leon answered that very well. I'll just kind of give it a high cut, is that I don't see them as apples to apples. They have enough they're a little bit different purposes. They have different pros and cons. So I don't necessarily see it as detracting from RCPP, but again, we would certainly meet with and help any partner navigate between the two programs. But we absolutely encourage you to take a look at both. The more tools in the toolbox.
All right, that was great, Leon. Thanks, and thanks, Rob. Any hands up or chat more questions for USDA? Kelly's waving her hand. I'm not sure if that's a comment or
yeah, I've never figured out how to officially do the electronic hand waving. But yeah, I just wanted to say, from EPA's perspective, we're really excited to be a big funder that provides funding to NIFWIF to run these programs, and it's just been exciting to see the innovative nutrient sediment reduction program really take off and build these strong regional partnerships and invest in them. And as Jake said, the DLLC is well positioned to take advantage of that. And Leon's point, I think, is really important to stress that a lot of times, once you get an innovative nutrient sediment reduction grant and you do that work and you build your capacity and the trusted relationships with the ag community, you really are ready to launch into that RCPP. And having this opportunity to use the EPA Chesapeake Bay grants as non-USDA partner contribution has really been a game changer for many of the partners. So we're really excited about that kind of 1-2 play with the INSR going to the RCPP. I think it's a really great pathway and something that we're really trying to encourage. Now that we have the climate smart commodities opportunity, we just see a lot of opportunity there, especially when you're talking about public-private partnerships with corporations like poultry integrators that have corporate sustainability goals. There could be some really neat opportunities where these projects are getting money to producers to implement practices that have that co-benefit of the water quality improvements that we're looking for in the Chesapeake Bay, as well as helping to meet the corporate greenhouse gas emission reduction targets that we're seeing in many areas of our industry. So, lots of great things to plan for, and I really appreciate our field liaisons with NIFWIF, how people like Kristen Hughes Evans is helping us, our partners, figure out how to navigate and where the opportunities are. So I just want to say thank you to NRCS and NIFWIF for helping with organizing partners and figuring out where the best opportunities are. The last point I wanted to make is we do have this other pot of money called the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, and the infrastructure law that was recently passed is bringing a lot more money to that program. And there's some tremendous opportunities to take better advantage of that funding for agriculture projects. And so we are EPA is hosting a workshop on April 28th to talk about the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, talk about what this new infrastructure law means for more money and more flexibility in using that funding for agriculture, and showcase, I think it's 5 different success stories of how that money has been used for some very relevant ag projects that could relate to the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And so I'll put the date and the timing in the chat, and we'll definitely get a save the date, announcement out to everybody, including the registration link in the next week or so. So stay tuned for that, but that'll be another opportunity down the road.
Thanks, Kelly. That's great. That's, I know just from a commission perspective, we worked hard for the, the funding that's in the infrastructure bill, both for the, not just for the EPA Bay program, but also the stuff to support the state revolving loan fund. And that has and that just trickles through not just ag, but obviously, local government, stormwater, wastewater, et cetera. That's money is very, can be very important in helping to meet the TMDL challenge. So that's great. And I'm going to sign up for that webinar. Any, just to wrap up this first session, any follow-up or questions for the any of the presenters?
Mark, Kristen has a question.
Okay.
Hey, I'm just wondering if the USDA Climate Smart Ag Initiative is also focused on N2O emissions and could be used to support improved nutrient management. We talk a lot about soil health, but N2O is also a big part of ag's greenhouse gas emissions.
It does include N2O, from what I understand from talking to Bonnie et al.
Yeah, that's right. And nutrient management is specifically listed as one of the priority practices.
That's great. That's when you got the experts in the room, you get to answer real quick. So any more? It's all about, it's great for DLC, nutrient management. That's our middle name. Okay, with that, we're going to transition now. We've had some great federal perspective, and as someone who managed federal grants for a couple decades for a state agency, I know it can be, all I can say is you need to have the capacity and the folks who sort of understand to be successful. You really need to have people who have the time and dedicated to understand these programs and how to take advantage of them. It's in some ways, it's an occupation into itself. And when you have that capacity, you can really get some great results. But with that, we're going to now turn to leveraging state cost share for federal funding. And we've got two great presenters. One, a good friend, Jason Kepler, who's the Watershed Implementation Program Manager for the Maryland Department of Agriculture. And also Christian Hughes Evans, who's the Executive Director of Sustainable Chesapeake. And Jason is going to talk about how to use Maryland cost share to leverage funding federal funds, which is a great segue for what we've just heard. So Jason, you're out there. I'm going to give you the mic. Need to unmute, Jason.
Okay, there we go. Can you see my screen? Okay, great. I'm seeing a nod from Mark, so I'll just go ahead and move forward. So thank you for the opportunity to give a presentation today on MDA's conservation programs that we have in Maryland. For the record, I'm Jason Kepler. I'm the program manager of our conservation grants program, formerly with the WIP program. So I've transitioned over full-time to conservation grants, which has, I guess, affectionately been known to as the MAX program, but it's more than just MAX. So we offer a variety of funding opportunities for producers throughout the state of Maryland to help address their resource concerns. So what I'd like to do is share a little bit about each of those programs with you today. But if I could, before I begin, I'd really like to echo what Rob had mentioned in his opening remarks, and that we need to ensure that the conservation programs complement one another. All the funding sources complement one another, and we're not competing against the same producers and the same projects, but to the extent that we can leverage existing monies together to help address those resource concerns, I think that's ultimately the goal. There is a recognition that we have so many different programs out there, and it does create some confusion within the the agricultural community. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. So we encourage any entity that's interested in applying for different grant funding, whether it's through NIFWIF or federal grants, et cetera, if there's an opportunity to partner with those entities, or at least have conversations on how we can best utilize our money against the proposals that are being suggested by them. So again, we're all in this together. So to the extent that we can all work collectively to help meet these goals, I think that's where we need to be. Again, I'm just going to go over MDA programs real quick. I know we only have a few minutes, so I'd be happy to take any questions at the end. Let's see here. So all of our program information can be found on our website. And I'm speaking specifically to Maryland here, obviously. So each state may be a little different, but we have a specific conservation section within our website that lists out all the different programs that we have. So I'm going to focus on the conservation grants program as a whole. And what I thought I'd do is each slide that I'm going to present, we have a trifold brochure that is located in our local conservation district offices that go into these in greater detail. But what I'll do is hit our main programs here, and then open it up for questions. So the bread and butter program that we have under conservation grants is called the Maryland Agricultural Water Quality Cost Share Program, or MAX program for short. It was the first conservation grants program within MDA that was established back in the early 80s. As a result of the first Bay Agreement from back in 1982 or 1983. So MAX has been around for quite some time. It's our traditional cost share program that we provide cost share assistance up to 100% cost share now of over 30 conservation practices. We do have limitations on those. We have caps per project, caps of $50,000. Or up to 150, or depending on whether there's ag waste involved in those projects or not. So quite a variety of different projects that are available for cost share assistance. Again, these projects require them to meet Nrcs standards and specifications, and we work closely with our federal partners to ensure that all the standards and specs are being met. We have on average between $6 and $8 million annually available through the MAX program. That is essentially bond money. It's capital bond money that the state puts up that requires us to go to the Board of Public Works for approval. So if a farmer is interested in applying, they work through the district office. District office would submit an application or forward an application to us. We then have to seek approval by the Board of Public Works, which is the governor, the comptroller, and the treasurer of the state of Maryland for every project. We also do have federal funding sources that we leverage, whether it's through the CBIG grants or most currently the most effective basin money that has been available through EPA. So we do have some federal money that goes into MAX as well. Typically, our cost share agreements are 10 to 15 years in length. And it's an agreement between us and MDA, the local conservation district office, as well as the farmer and landowner. Throughout that contract life, the projects are subject to spot checks to make sure that they stay in compliance. We do have a technical advisory committee that meets annually to go over the program and make recommendations on how we can improve the process. And then we also work closely with the State Soil Conservation Committee in establishing our policies and procedures. So that's our primary vehicle for structural practice implementation in Maryland is through the MAX program. And there's a lot more information available on our website. Another huge program that we have in under conservation grants is our cover crop program. And everybody is pretty much familiar with cover crops at this point, I would say. We have $22.5 million allocated annually to implement our cover crop program. And this is to pay farmers to help them offset the costs of seed and labor and equipment to planting cover crops. So depending on the year, we continue to modify our eligibility requirements and program offerings, but we'll pay anywhere from $40 all the way up to $90 per acre to plant cover crops, depending on how and when it's planted, what's planted, things of that sort. We have a variety of different options, whether they're traditional straight grain crop cover crops or mixes that include legumes or brassicas and forage radishes. All the state that's purchased it must be treated and tested and labeled according to our seed law and regulations. Applicants have to be in good standards or a good standing with MAX, and they have to be in compliance with nutrient management. And our conservation district offices actually go out and conduct field checks on an annual basis. And for those that are familiar with the Chesapeake Bay program, the verification ad hoc group that's been formed, Dean Hively with USGS actually gave a presentation on leveraging remote sensing to verify cover crop implementation as well. So we're looking at getting folks out of the field and doing a lot of time intensive field checks and relying heavily on new technologies as they become available. So that's cover crop program. We also have a manure transport program that helps animal producers that have high phosphorus levels in their soil or inadequate land to take that manure and help transport that manure out of areas that are saturated or overly abundant in phosphorus to other areas of the state that can utilize it. So we'll pay up to $28 per ton to transport excess manure to other farms or alternative use facilities that can safely utilize the manure. In the case of poultry litter, I think it's 5 of the poultry companies actually contribute to the cost of the transportation. So they'll provide up to 50% cost share to help transport that litter as well. So it's just not an endeavor by MDA, but it's also a recognition by many of the poultry companies that there's benefits to transporting manure to other areas of the state. Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, or CREP. This is another huge program for us. This is a federal state partnership that pays top dollar to take environmentally sensitive land out of production for 10 or 15 years to plant buffers, wetlands, protect highly erodible land, create wildlife habitat, those types of things. There's a number of different ways that a farmer can get paid. I think if we add them all up, there's 5 different payments that a farmer could receive for CREP. So in addition to MAX program providing cost share assistance up to 100% for buffers, we provide incentive payments as well. So we'll pay up to, in this case, this slide's a little bit dated now. We'll pay up to $1,000 per acre for an incentive bonus for farmers that wish to plant riparian forest buffers. So we are leveraging other pots of money to further incentivize existing federal programs as well. The goal is 100,000 acres. We've been consistently falling short of that over time. So we're hoping that this new incentive payment that's available will help with that. And for those that are familiar with state law or bills that are passed, especially last legislative session, there was a piece of legislation called the Tree Solutions Now Act that actually provides up to $2 million annually to the Maryland Department of, $2.5 million annually to the Department of Agriculture for these incentive payments. We have, in addition to cost share, we also have other financial avenues or packages to help farmers. One is a Maryland income tax subtraction or modification program. So farmers can write off essentially the cost of conservation tillage equipment, manure spreading equipment, precision ag pieces of equipment, as well as any practice that they may be responsible for on the ground. So again, another option for farmers to further, receive a benefit for implementing conservation on the ground that's not necessarily directly related to a payment. We also have a low interest loan for agricultural conservation program. So this is a LILAC, it's called the LILAC program. So if farmers may not have the funds up front to cover the cost of their portion of cost share, or want to buy a piece of equipment that meets the eligibility requirements under the program, they can apply for a low interest loan to help bridge that gap. And then it's traditionally a few percentage points less than what the current market rates are. And those loans are guaranteed through the Water Quality Revolving Loan Fund that MDE manages. So while it's not a cost share program, we do provide low interest loans to help farmers implement new technologies or practices on their land for conservation. We have a certainty program that recognizes farmers for implementing conservation on their land. And for those farmers that have demonstrated that they've met their requirements under the TMDL, they can apply for the certainty program, and that provides basically a 10-year exemption from any new environmental regulations that may come about in Maryland. So this is a good way for a farmer to demonstrate, to say, hey, look, I've done my part. I'm doing everything I can to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. I shouldn't be responsible for taking any additional regulations on. And this is a way for us to recognize those farms to do that. We also have a nutrient trading program. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that, but this is another funding option to get conservation on the ground, where if a farmer has met their requirements under the TMDL, and if they want to do more above and beyond that, they could take those projects and put them onto an environmental market where they could actually sell the nitrogen, phosphorus, or sediment credits and get paid for it that way. We also have a soil health program that is looking at opportunities to promote healthy and productive soils. There's a soil health advisory committee that has recently provided recommendations to our secretary regarding practices that could help us improve soil health. Many of them align quite closely with our traditional conservation programs, such as cover crops, no-till, things of that sort. So we look forward to working with the advisory committee and building some of these co-benefits into many of our projects that we already have. And then there's a recognition that there's a lot of work that is being done to help us address greenhouse gas reductions. For those that may not be familiar, Maryland has a Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act plan that has been established, where we have to provide certain greenhouse gas reductions by the year 2035, if I'm not mistaken. But there's a number of practices, again, talking about co-benefits for water quality. There's many that provide greenhouse gas reductions. So we're trying to leverage those as well. So any carbon market or environmental market that might come into pass, certainly I think we'd be able to leverage a lot of our existing BMPs under that type of system as well. So that was a lot in a short period of time. I know I was only given a few minutes. So Mark, I'll be happy to turn it back over to you and take those now.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, we're just going to, for now, just keep moving because we do want to get to have some opportunity, but that was extremely useful. And it's amazing the wealth of programs you guys administer that benefit both Maryland producers and conservation. So Christian, you've got a couple minutes if you can.
I can wrap it up quick.
Thanks.
Jason, you weren't kidding. It is much more than max. I had no idea. Thank you for that. So I just want to make a couple of points about leveraging state cost share to bring in additional federal dollars. I would just really encourage everyone to think of the state funding agencies as partners. And MDA is a fantastic partner when it comes to implementing RCPP or EPA funded projects. And Jason just reviewed all the many different state investments that can be used to leverage those grants. So Delaware and Virginia folks could not be here today, but they did send me information about how to work with the state cost share funding programs to leverage those to bring in federal dollars. And I won't go over the details. You all can read the slide here. But Delaware welcomes anyone looking to develop a project to reach out to them. They can help figure out what the best available matching funds are. And we can go on to the next slide here for Virginia. And, you know, just to echo what I said earlier, James Martin at Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, you know, really pointed out that they want to be, they want to be consulted in the project development phase. Like DCR, you know, they have great ideas. They want to influence projects that leverage state cost share programs to make sure they're tied into the state water quality goals. So again, consider your state agency folks as a really valued partner in developing these projects. And Virginia actually does have a set way of requesting state cost share dollars. And this is the way they can do that. And anyways, this is recorded, so there's a lot of information on these slides. Please feel free to come back. And also Jen Nelson, I'm just seeing in the chat, can answer questions about state cost share as well. Thank you, Jen. That's it for me.
Thanks, Christian. All right, so I really appreciate all the presenters and your time. And now I'd like to, because we do want to wrap this up on schedule, I'd kind of like to reach out to the group because you've had a lot of information. A lot of the folks that are on the session take advantage of these programs or participate in them. And at the same time, I think they probably better understand some of the challenges associated with that. So I'd like to just sort of really open this up to the participants. And for example, for